Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine on the road for the first of 3 weeks in a row. I'm in a rather cool location. This is Montegray and Independents, and it is the newest addition to the many wine bars that are now flourishing in and around Stellenbosch. It's not something we've got a great history of in South Africa. We haven't had nearly enough wine bars celebrating the wine that we make, offering wine by the glass and giving people a kind of wine bar experience that you might find at, say, somewhere like Gordon's in the Strand in London, one of my favourite wine bars. So this is a new one, and it's got a particular link to Dan Really Likes Wine because it is owned by Michael Jordaan, who is my fellow director on Dan Really Likes Wine, and together with his significantly younger wife Rose, the former model who owns Bartony with him now, the wine estate just outside of Stellenbosch, they have given us Montegray and Independents. The Independents will meet next week and the week after. They refer to some smaller winemakers who are producing some fantastic stuff, especially around the Banhoek Valley, which is where Michael and Rose call home. But this week it is the Montegray half of the title, and a label that is also owned by Michael and Rose. And what they've done is they've gone exploring Stellenbosch, probably on their mountain bikes. They're both very keen mountain bikers. Rose is very talented and Michael is very enthusiastic, and they have dug up a whole pile of vineyards, a whole pile of grapes in little corners of Stellenbosch that have maybe been neglected or not seen too often or not used, and they've found stuff to make into their Montegray label here. It's also linked to the name of Michael's business. Now he's no longer a bank teller in Johannesburg and instead running 300 different startups out of the jacuzzi in his office here in Stellenbosch, which is right next door to the wine bar, which is where I expect he makes a number of his decisions. And the first of the 4 wines from the Montegray range is their Shannon Blanc. So this is the perfect grape to get us going with. I can imagine that it didn't take too much persuasion for Michael and Rose to look at a Shannon as their white offering. It is very much a wine in resurgence, and it's a wine that plenty of winemakers are having a great deal of fun and a great deal of success with at the moment. Old style grape, buried in plenty of French history, and where it was not that long ago, maybe looked down upon slightly, it's now very much at the forefront of South Africa's white wine palette. Unsurprisingly, it is a very hot day in Stellenbosch today, which meant the first distraction upon walking in the doors of Montegray and Independent was Rose Jordaan in her bikini working behind the bar. The second distraction is certainly this. Rose reckons it's her pick of the lot from the Montegray range, and you can see why. It's a really fresh wine. There's almost a crunch to it, a real crackle of life. Shannon is doing such good things in South Africa at the moment, and here's another one to add to the list of superb examples of the cultivar. It's a lovely wine, and it's a terrific start to my Montegray adventure. Following on from the Shannon, here is the Grenache from Montegray, and before we look at the wine, have a look at the tag. It might not look anything particularly impressive, a slightly hippie-ish Christmas label feel to it, but as you might be able to see, it's slightly rough, and that's because it's recycled paper and it's embedded with seeds. So once you've finished your bottle and sent it off to be recycled, you can plant this in your garden. Now, I'm not sure if you will get a beautiful crop of Grenache grapes as a result, but you'll certainly get something. And all of this wine is linked to the Cape Floral Kingdom, through which Michael and Rose spend a lot of time cycling, and this is a way of spreading that and protecting the floral heritage of the Cape. So it is a nice touch, and it's certainly a pleasant one, but the important stuff is what is inside the bottle, and in this case, one of the lighter reds, Grenache, hailing from Spain, and now finding home at Montegray and Independents here in the Cape. One of the great misnomers about international wine is the concept of room temperature, given that wherever you are in the world, the temperature of a room will be very different. If you live in an igloo somewhere in northern Alaska, it's likely to be slightly cooler than a room in Stellenbosch at this time of year. And living in South Africa, room temperature is frequently, I find, too warm for red wine, especially the lighter red wines like this. And so to have this particular Grenache just a few degrees below what you might normally anticipate a red wine being makes it absolutely delightful. Like white wine, you don't want it to be too cold because then you start losing some of the flavour and some of the essence of the wine, but on a really hot Stellenbosch day like today, this is perfect. It's the right temperature, and most importantly, it's a really nice wine. It's particularly light. You can see that pinkish hue more than a deep red that reflects the lightness of the wine. There's a great subtlety to it, almost a very faint sweetness without being sickly. So if you think of a rosé, you're kind of headed in the direction. The next step along the evolutionary trail, so to speak, would be a Grenache in terms of that style and that flavour. Really good summer red wine. This is made perfectly, and so far it's 2 from 2 for Montegray. On to wine number 3, and something a little unusual, which ties in with the theme of originality that runs through everything they do with the Montegray range, and indeed much that Michael and Rose themselves do. This is 100% Petit Verdot. I think in the year and a half or thereabouts that we've been running Down Really Likes Wine, we've only ever done one 100% Petit Verdot before. It's not something you often see on its own. Very often used with that 5% here, a 10% there, splashed into a blend, but on its own, it's a wine you don't see too much of. But on the rare occasions I have had 100% Petit Verdot, it's a wine I've really been taken by. Clearly the Jordaans have as well, and so this is why they've produced one for their Montegray range. Very different to the previous wine in a number of ways. You often talk about Petit Verdot as being inky, having that darkness to it, and you can see it's certainly a lot darker than the previous wine. Having just had a very light Grenache, it probably makes this feel a little heavier and stronger than perhaps it is. It might not be everybody's cup of tea. It's a slightly quirky idea to have a single varietal Petit Verdot, and maybe that's why it hasn't caught on as something that's massively popular. But I really like this. It's something different. It's a variety we don't see much on its own, and I think the Montegray team have done a really nice job with what's clearly a strong parcel of Petit Verdot. And then on to the last of the lot, and before I try the wine, a quick look at the label. Really nice piece of art, a couple of kids on the leopard. Those might be the little Jordaans, there are several of them, and that Cape leopard playing in with that whole Cape floral kingdom, which is something particularly close to the collective hearts of the Jordaans. So great label, it's quite fun and playful and very original, much like the wine itself. Now that Petit Verdot was a slightly unfamiliar feel. This is a lot more recognisable. The Syrah from Montegray, and it's very close to home in every sense because the grapes for this Syrah come from Bartony itself. It was land from the original estate, then lost, then repurchased back, and these make up a classic wine in every sense. It's a beautiful, rich, old school Syrah, and I can see this vanishing by the bottle over a long dinner. And if you've ever had dinner at the Jordaans, it is never a short affair, and it's always full of fantastic wine, and this would be right in place at one of those famed dinners of theirs. As with all the wine, it's a terrific collection. You might not have heard of it. It's not made in large collections, but it does celebrate some beautiful wine areas of Stellenbosch, and especially the Banhoek Valley. I think that Grenache probably my pick of the lot, but all of them are terrific. If you'd like to try them out, here's the place to come to. Montegray and Independents in Stellenbosch. The Montegray part has certainly delivered, and we'll be back next week with more of Dan Really Likes Wine as we check out the Independents and see what they have to offer. Cheers.